Hey guys, Come4MC here. Welcome to our 22nd LBP tutorial. It's been a while since our last one, so we're going to do kind of a simple one. It's going to be pretty interesting. It's got very specific applications, but at least it's going to show you a little bit about how we can use wireless signal communication between different microchips, and it's also going to do a little bit of feedback loop stuff. So some of that scary stuff, that's the tricky stuff from our last from 2 tutorials ago. So what I've set up here is I've set up a wheel, and I've set up a piston that's moving a piece of material, and these things are moving very fast indeed. And what I'm going to do is show you guys how you can make a slow motion type of effect. So you could put something like this and then slow them down temporarily in an effect kind of like this. So grab that, everything slows down, we get some nice global changes, the sounds change. So we get this nice slow motion effect, and then once that phases out, after 10 seconds it's going to return to normal. So that's basically what I'm going to show you how to make today. It's really pretty simple, and it's kind of cool, and you can see this effect being used in Holguin's, how do you say his name? Holguin's Clockwork Ruins level. It came out a while ago, and I helped him set up a system similar to this, so you can see how that's going to work here. Okay, so I'm just going to go off to the side, and the first thing that we're going to need to set up is some trigger for our slow motion effect. I'm just using a grab switch. You could set it up to be a regular switch, a button, or you can make it automatic for whatever you would like. I'm just going to, for consistency with what I've already made, just create a dissolve block and set up a grab switch on it. So this is going to be our trigger. Now what we want to do is turn on our effect for a set amount of time. So you might be able to guess that we're going to use a timer for that. And I'm just going to go ahead and pause. So we'll use a timer, and I'm going to wire the grab switch into this timer and set it to 10 seconds, that's how long we want it to run for, and change the input action to start count down. So it's going to fill all the way to 100% and then count down. And the on-off signal in this will turn on when it's all the way full, and it won't turn back off until it's back to 0. So that's kind of what we're going for here. Now I'm going to use a selector because we're going to want to turn one thing on and turn the other thing off, and what I mean by the things in this case are strengths. We're going to turn on a 100% strength and then swap that with a smaller strength or signal, an analog signal, and that's going to determine what our speeds of our rotating and moving objects are going to be. So what I'm going to do is set up a selector and wire our timer into the bottom, the second selector input port, and then wire the output on the second port back into the first one. So basically what this is going to do is it's going to be at the first selector state at default to start, and then when the timer turns on, it's going to override the second selector state. Remember, the bottom selector state has priority over the ones above it. And then as soon as the timer turns back off, this output wire is going to reset our selector back to the start. So I could have used a NOT gate, but the nice thing about a selector is the outputs from a selector are always going to be at 100% signals. And that's going to be desirable for our application that we're doing here. So I'm just going to move this all the way off to the side so we have more room to work with. And I'm going to put a tag in the bottom corner, and this is going to be our method of communicating wirelessly to all the other components in the level. And I'm just going to change this to purple. You can change it to whatever color, apply a label, whatever. And then we're going to put an OR gate in here. The reason I'm putting an OR gate is because we're going to send 2 different signal strengths through this tag. That top one is just going to be my default 100%, so I'm just going to wire my top selector port right into the first OR gate, first port on the OR gate there. And then what I want my second state to be is a 15% signal. So I'm going to slow it down quite a bit. And the way that we make a 15% signal from that 100% coming out of the selector is an AND gate. If you remember, an AND gate takes the lowest of the 2 signals coming into it, or if you have only one thing wired into it, it's only going to take that thing. And so we're just going to bump this one down to 15%, wire that into one of the AND inputs, and we'll take our 100% coming from our selector and wire that into the other of the AND inputs. And so that's going to take the smallest of the two, which will always be 15% or 0 if this is off. If this selector is outputting to the first one, then it's going to turn off. So this is going to be our 15% signal. So our two OR conditions are going to be either 100% signal or 15% signal, depending on if we've turned our effect on or off. And that's going to send a signal through this purple tag here. And because I don't feel like making a new circle, I'm just going to copy this one from over here. And I'm going to have to change the color accordingly. So we go into this tag sensor tweak menu. I've set it to be fairly large so that we can trigger things that are far away, and I can just copy this sensor and use it over and over again. Need to make sure my color is purple so it matches with the tag, and make sure my output value is signal strength as opposed to closeness, which is what it's at by default. So we'll just set that to signal strength. So when there's a 15% signal coming through here, it's going to pick that up here and send it to what I've set up here as a motor bolt. And I need to make sure I set my motor bolt to speed scale. So when it gets a different signal in, it's going to reflect that in its speed and set the speed to fairly high. So right now we pretty much have a setup that's going to work for slowing things down. So if I unpause this, it's going to go really fast. When I grab this, it's going to slow down for 10 seconds. We'll see that go. And then it's going to speed back up when that 10 seconds is complete. Now you'll notice that there's a pretty harsh transition between when it's spinning really fast and when it's spinning slow. It kind of stops really abruptly. What I'm going to do to amend that is to use a really simple sort of feedback loop. I'm using it because it allows us to make that change happen slowly. So I'm going to move this tag over a little bit, and I'm going to put some things in between our OR gate and that tag. It's pretty simple. It's a little tricky why it works, but it's only we're adding two things in between. The first is going to be a direction combiner, and the other one is going to be a timer. And I'm going to set this timer up to be 0.5 seconds, so I want it to switch from one state to the next in about a half a second. Maybe a little slower than that, but it's going to mask that abrupt change that we get from 100% to 15. And I'm going to set, and it's kind of grayed out, you can kind of see it, I'm going to change this to speed scale. And then I'm going to wire my direction combiner right into this timer. Wire the timer back here into, I can't remember which one, I think it's the bottom one. Let me just double check over here. I always forget. It is the bottom one, yes. And then wire our OR gate into the top of this direction combiner. Basically what this is going to do is perform a subtraction. In layman's terms, it's going to basically make this timer match the signal that we're getting out. But because I've made it 0.5 seconds, it's going to match that signal that's going through our OR gate. It's going to just take a half a second for it to change. And then wire this into our tag. So let's see if I can't move this down so we can see it. So you'll notice, you see how it takes a few seconds for it to fill all the way up to 100%? And then when I press it, it's going to take a little bit to drop down to 15. So it masks that abrupt change from 100% to 15. So it's just really, really subtle tweaks that are going to make this effect have a more polished feel to it. So really our effect is working. We can add some things like, and I'm just going to go ahead and steal them from over here so I don't have to bore you with tweaking these. I've put some effects, some sounds and lighting effects and stuff like that on that previous chip I had made. So we just have a sci-fi sound, sounds like that. And because I've set the modifier to be -12, it plays for a lot longer. So this is going to be what it's going to play when our slow motion effect is triggered. And we'll just go ahead and wire all of these up. And then we've got a lighting change. And we've got a audio tweaker change. I've set it to hanger, and the sound effects reverb all the way up, so it gives it a nice echoey feel. And then these other ones are just the defaults. So I just wire these up, and these are going to be our default settings here. and I just made it play a reverse sound when it's done, and then reset the lighting and the sounds back to normal. So those are just really simple tweaks that you can add, and you can change those sounds and effects as it would match your level. So when we change this, you'll see we get the nice lighting effect. We get the sounds, which kind of really add to the selling this slow motion, though. Things are changing. And this is pretty much all the logic that we're going to need to send a signal wirelessly to everything else. And it's got these global effects here. So you can make more than one of these, just copy them, and they're going to affect all the the slow motion things that you want in your level. So I could make a copy of that one, make another switch over here, grab it, and it does the exact same thing. And then that one's going to expire. And then we can switch this one over here again. And so basically you could make everything in your level communicate through these different switches and just locate them in different areas so that it's convenient to triggering the slow motion effect. Okay, so if we wanted to add other things like a really fast moving piston, for example, it's as simple as just making your piston move and then wiring up the same tag sensors which you've got on your wheel, putting that to your piston, and changing this piston input action to speed scale. So pretty much you can manipulate anything that has a tweakable speed scale option. I've done another one over here. So this is, let's go to preview so we can see it. This is a hazard that goes way too quickly to try to run under that. You couldn't outrun it. So I've put, the way that I'm triggering those is on a sequencer. And so I just have some batteries. And those batteries will trigger a danger tweaker. So this is going to be some electricity, and also turn on that light so you can see it. And by communicating with this, and I'll just copy this over so we can use it on the stuff we've made. By setting it up in the exact same way, where we take a signal, purple signal, and wire that into a sequencer set to speed scale, when we grab this, it's going to slow down this sequencer because it has a lesser signal going into it, and so it's going to slow down this animation, so you would have enough time to run through that electricity danger animation there. So that's really simple applications that you can use this speed stuff for. You could do some other interesting things with movers, setting movers to have different speeds, so you could be moving some objects on the screen and those all slow down as well. It's all about selling the slow motion effect. I think the lighting change and the sound change helps a lot, but if you had some like a moving background, or you had some pieces of stuff flying all over the place and you slowed those down temporarily during that effect, you could get a really nice slow motion thing, and might look nice in your own levels. So hope you guys see some nice uses for this transmitting signals wirelessly. I know we've talked about it before. A lot of times it hasn't really been necessary, but here it's nice because you don't have to have wires running everywhere. You can make multiple copies of things and you don't have to add OR gates everywhere. So I could copy this here, and I don't have to run an OR gate saying that if this one is pressed or this one is pressed. It's all done wirelessly. So you can use that one as well. Okay, so I hope you guys have learned something, or at least see some nice applications for things. I think that's all we've got for now, so take care. Bye-bye.
The tutorials will unleash not only exciting tools and objects, but knowledge and the deepest secrets of the cosmos.